Neil Marshall has a new film out that just dropped on Blu-ray a few weeks ago, and we're going to talk about it today. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well out there, and today we're going to head back to horror territory. But before we do that, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. Today we're going to talk about that film right there, The Lair. Neil Marshall's new film just dropped on Blu-ray a few weeks ago. This premiered October 28th of 2022 over at Fright Fest in London. It's unrated. It's an hour and 36 minutes long, and Neil Marshall co-wrote this film and directed this film along with Charlotte Kirk, who stars in this film as Captain Sinclair. She co-wrote this film as well, like she did with The Reckoning that they just did a couple years ago that I reviewed. And they have another film they already have in a can. I think Neil Marshall's in post on, called Duchess. I don't know when that's going to drop, but that'll be their third movie they've done together. And basically, Captain Sinclair is a fighter pilot in the British Air Force, and she gets shot down over Afghanistan, and she's in pursuit by these insurgents, and she finds this underground bunker that she takes shelter in. The insurgents follow her into the bunker. She stumbles across this lab that has these creatures in these tanks, and before you know it, they wake up and start tearing the insurgents apart. And she happens to escape outside of the bunker and gets found by a military patrol and gets taken back to this little outpost that they have going on in Afghanistan. And pretty soon, the creatures get out of the bunker and besiege this little outpost, and they have to fight them off to survive the night. And then they go on one final mission to destroy this threat, and they go into the bunker and they blow it up, and some of them survive and some of them do not, and that is pretty much The Lair. Very simple story here. What to like about this film? Well, I like Neil Marshall. I've liked Neil Marshall. I've been a fan of his since Dog Soldiers dropped on Sci-Fi. It got a theatrical release over in England and some other territories, but in America, it dropped on Sci-Fi. And I remember recording that on VHS still at the time and rewatching that many times. I really love that film. And then he came out with Descent. I love that film. Then he came out with Doomsday, and even though it's batshit crazy, I love that film as well. Centurion I like. The Reckoning I was lukewarm on. It was okay. And this one, in the plus side, the practical makeup effects of the creature itself, when it was practical, I liked the design. I liked the way they pulled it off. It was a guy in a suit. I always appreciate that kind of effect instead of going CGI. Some of the action's okay. There's some nice overhead shots. There's a lot of action. And then we're going to get into the negatives. Some of the acting in this film is very wooden, even from Charlotte Kirk. I know her and Neil Marshall are a couple, and I don't want to be too negative, but I know he has a third movie coming out with her, but she is not the greatest actress. She's okay, but she's very wooden. She's not the only one, though. She's not the only She's not the only one given wooden acting in this film. Some of the rest of the cast down the line, some of the acting is very wooden. You have British actors giving some of the worst Southern accents because they're playing Americans, and the accents are laughable. They're not good at all. Again, there's some nice overhead shots. I'm assuming they used a drone for that because it's cheaper. The practical effects are good on the creatures, but then there's CGI incorporated, and they try to quick cut around it, but it looks like sci-fi level CGI, which means it looks like dog shit. The CGI effects look awful. The film feels cheap. I'm assuming Neil Marshall did not have a whole lot of money here. The lab set looked cool, and this little outpost looks good, but the film all around just feels cheap. And that is something I can't say about Dog Soldiers, and that was a low-budget movie. But I never felt like Dog Soldiers looked cheap. I like the set design, all that. Even Descent, they didn't have a ton of money, but I never felt that it looked cheap. Here, the movie overall, even from the way it's shot, and I like the way Neil Marshall shoots action here, but this isn't some of the most inciting action he's ever done. He did way better with way less money before. And I know his biggest budget movies is a Hellboy remake, and then Doomsday, which he had a nice budget. I love Doomsday. I think there's some great action scenes in that. Here, some of the action's entertaining, but it's not the greatest. It really isn't. It definitely feels like a direct-to-DVD movie here. And it didn't reach my expectations. I had high expectations. I really like Neil Marshall. Even Centurion, which was a low-budget, like sword and sandals type movie. That movie had some really cool action and didn't feel as low budget as it actually was. He did a lot with very little. Here it just feels like a cheap production overall, minus the practical effects on the creatures. And there's some practical gore effects here sprinkled with some CGI blood. The movie was disappointing. They never reached the heights where I hoped it would. I was excited about seeing this because I like Neil Marshall. I'm a fan of Neil Marshall as a director, but this isn't one of his best efforts, certainly. And I just hope that he gets back to the level that I appreciated back when he did Dog Soldiers and Descent and Doomsday and Centurion. But this doesn't live up to those movies at all. The creatures themselves, I said they look cool. They look like an amalgamation of the Licker from Resident Evil, at least in my mind. The Licker from Resident Evil, Venom, and the creatures from Humanoids from the Deep, that Roger Corman film from way back when. Roger Corman didn't direct that one, but it was one that was made in his studios. They kind of remind me of an amalgamation of those three creatures. And honestly, this movie will remind you of Aliens, Resident Evil, films like that. And definitely it has that flavor to it. It's a Russian bunker from, basically the Cold War when Russia was in Afghanistan and they were doing experiments on humans with this alien technology, and they mutated into these creatures that we find out during the film. It's a very simple premise, and honestly, it's all you need if it's badass. This just didn't hit what it needed to hit to be a badass film. It's just I had an okay time with it. It really didn't hit my expectations here. I didn't have super high expectations, but I expected more from Neil Marshall than this. And at the end of the day, I would give this one a 5 out of 10. It's okay. It's streaming on Shudder right now if you want to check it out, if you have a Shudder account. I got that Blu-ray on Amazon for like $14. It's a movie that I'm in no hurry to rewatch. I didn't have a good enough time with it to say, I got to see that again. I saw it sometime in the future. I'll rewatch it. But yeah, at the end of the day, a 5 out of 10 for The Lair. Have you seen this film yet? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share it. It's really great. Would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with some more reviews. But until next time, bye.